各位记者朋友
Good afternoon. Welcome to today's press briefing. Now the floor is open for questions.
Thank you. Question from AFP. The European Union has agreed on a new tool that will enable it to place tariffs on countries it thinks are engaging in economic blackmail. This decision comes after China imposed trade restrictions.
实施经济威胁的那些国家加征关税，有评论称这是针对中国利用其经济威胁来影响与立陶宛的贸易，而立陶宛此前加强了与台湾方面的贸易。请问中方对此有何评论？
首先我要讲的一点是关于立陶宛。
First of all, on Lithuania's wrongdoings on Taiwan questions, China has made clear its position more than once. We urge Lithuania to go back to the right track of One China principle. China and the EU are victims of U.S. economic coercion. The U.S. has coerced other countries to stop import semiconductor equipment, which will damage the development of the market and the sector, violates international trade law rules and economic orders. We would like to work with the international community to oppose U.S. economic coercion.
下一个问题。
Next one, please.
现发言人总台央视记者提问：中方已经发布了洪都拉斯总统卡斯特罗将访华的消息，能否介绍此访安排和中方的期待？中方如何看待？
How does China view the current China-Honduras relations? China and Honduras officially established diplomatic relations on March the 26th this year, opening up a new chapter of the history of the bilateral ties. In the past 2 months and more, China and Honduras have worked intensively to follow through on the commitments made upon the establishment of diplomatic ties. Guided by the principles and goals of mutual respect, equality, mutual benefit, and common development, both sides have reached out to each other with an utmost sense of urgency to get the bilateral relations up to a strong and rapid start. The visit will be the first state visit by the President of Honduras to China. The two heads of state will hold a historic meeting and jointly chart and guide the future development of bilateral ties. China looks forward to working with Honduras to deepen mutual trust, expand cooperation, enhance friendship, and promote the sustained and steady growth of bilateral relations through this important visit. Next one, please.
谢谢王先生。日本共同社的记者提问。
Kyoto News. According to many media organizations, Secretary of State Blinken will visit China in weeks and meet President Xi Jinping. Can you confirm this information? Or can you provide more information?
On the question that you raised, I have nothing to share with you. Next one, please.
谢谢发言人。总台央网记者提问：美白宫国安会印太事务协调员
U.S. Indo-Pacific Coordinator Kurt Campbell said that episodes like what he called dangerous navigation by a Chinese destroyer in the Taiwan Strait on Saturday show the need to prevent circumstances when unintended consequences can be terrible consequences. U.S. Democratic Senator Cardin said that what China is doing is against international law, and we've got to stand up to China's bulliness. How does the Chinese side respond to this? Speaking of bulliness and intimidation, the U.S. understands their meanings better than any other country. According to reports, in 2022 alone, large U.S. reconnaissance aircraft conducted over 800 closing spying flights against China. In 2022, the U.S. also sent aircraft carrier strike groups to the South China Sea and waters nearby multiple times. Brandishing its military prowess, the U.S. willfully flexes muscles and infringe upon other countries' sovereignty. This is what bulliness and intimidation look like. This is the source of security risks on the sea and in the air that threaten regional peace and stability. Faced with the U.S. military provocations on the sea and in the air, China responded in accordance with laws and regulations. These actions are completely justified and lawful. and couldn't be further from bullying. When it comes to safeguarding China's sovereignty and territorial integrity, there's no room for compromise. This has nothing to do with bulliness or intimidation, and everything to do with our principles and bottom line. Next one, please.
谢谢发言人。环球时报记者提问：据日本
Global Times, according to Japanese media, a report released by TEPCO shows that the radioactive element CS137 in black rockfish caught in Fukushima far exceeds safety levels, reaching 18,000 becquerel per kilogram, 180 times that of the standard maximum stipulated in Japan's food safety law. Do you have any comment? The Japanese government has repeatedly sought to whitewash its discharge of nuclear contaminated water from the plant, claiming the water to be harmless and the discharge to be justified and calling it the only option. Yet facts prove otherwise. Many in the world have been asking, if the nuclear contaminated water were indeed as safe as Japan says, why doesn't Japan discharge it into its inland lakes? Why has Japan insisted on building the discharge tunnel and eagerly launched it? The answer from Japan's own experts committee is quite straightforward. Discharge into the sea is the cheapest option with minimum risk of polluting Japan itself. Saving the cost for oneself at the expense of the whole world is extremely selfish and irresponsible. The ocean is humanity's common good, not Japan's private sewer. On the disposal of the water, Japan clearly has other options. Japan's Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry offered 5 proposals, and experts from neighboring countries proposed safer and more prudent plans such as long-term storage. However, without fully assessing the alternatives, the Japanese government has unilaterally decided to dump the water into the ocean. Such a selfish move that puts the common interests of all humanity in jeopardy will not persuade the people either from Japan or from other countries. It is a disgraceful act that will harm the people of Japan's neighbors and Pacific Island countries and cost Japan its reputation among the international community. Next one, please.
Thank you. Question from RIA Novosti. Yesterday, the Kakhovka power plant and dam sustained huge damage that caused uncontrolled overflow, flooding, and mass evacuation. The Russian Foreign Minister said that Ukrainian forces were responsible for the attack, but Ukraine, from its side, accuses Russia. What's China's comment on this incident? Thank you.
We noted relevant reports and expressed serious concerns over the damage made to the Kakhovka Dam, and are deeply concerned over the ensuing humanitarian, economic, and environmental consequences. We call on all parties to the conflict to follow international humanitarian law and make all our efforts to protect the security of civilians and civil facilities. China's position on the Ukraine crisis is consistent and clear. Under the current circumstances, it is hoped that all sides should stay committed to the political settlement of Ukraine crisis and ease the situation together. Next one, please.
NHK UK Home Secretary told the Parliament that the UK side has asked the Chinese embassy that it should close the function of any secret police station in London. The Chinese embassy said it was closed. What's your comment?
China always strictly abides by the international law and respects judicial sovereignty of all countries. We have made clear our position on relevant issues more than once. There is no the so-called secret police stations. We urge the U.S. to respect facts, stop hyping up things and smearing China, and do not create any barriers to China-UK relations.
下一个问题。
Next one, please.
Hi, a question from Bloomberg. South Africa is considering switching the venue of an upcoming summit of BRICS leaders to another country, according to people familiar with the matter, in a move that would resolve its dilemma over whether to carry out an international arrest warrant for Russian President Vladimir Putin. The government is considering asking China to host the meeting of the heads of state, or alternatively, Mozambique, according also to people familiar. Does the Foreign Ministry have any comment, and will China be willing to host the BRICS Summit? Thank you.
彭博社提问：南非正在考虑将即将召开的金砖国家峰会转移到另外一个国家。据消息人士称，这是为了防止陷入一个是否需要逮捕俄罗斯总统普京的这样一个困境。另外，据消息人士称，这个中国或者是莫桑比克也许会召开下一届的金砖峰会。请问外交部对此有何评论？那么中方是否会召开金砖峰会
Could you repeat your question, please?
We're wondering if China is considering hosting the BRICS Summit. According to people familiar, South Africa is considering switching the venue in order to resolve a dilemma over whether or not to carry out an international arrest warrant for the Russian president. Thank you.
我的问题是，中方是否在考虑召开下一届的金砖峰会？此前金砖峰会应该是在南非举行，而南非正在考虑将峰会转移到另外一个国家，这是为了解决其是否需要执行国际对于俄罗斯总统普京逮捕令的这样一个困境。
I'm not aware of the specifics. South Africa has already made an announcement that they will provide diplomatic privileges and immunities to the participants of BRICS Summit. China supports relevant countries to send positive signals of making this year's BRICS Summit a great success. Next one, please.
还有其他的问题吗？
Anything else?
Another question from Bloomberg. The Financial Times has reported that the EU is considering mandatory ban on using Huawei to build 5G. We're wondering if the Foreign Ministry has any comment.
彭博社提问：
国家
The U.S. and some European countries keep alleging that Huawei poses a security risk, but have failed to show any evidence that it is typical presumption of guilt and disinformation. The U.S. whole-of-government suppression of Huawei, a private Chinese company, is a textbook example of coercive diplomacy and tech bullying. Since Huawei started operation in Europe many years ago, it has never harmed the security of any European country. On the contrary, it has given a strong boost to Europe's telecommunications sector and generated considerable socio-economic benefits. Should the EU decide to ban Huawei in spite of all these facts, it would be a brazen violation of the principles of market economy, free trade, and fair competition that the EU claims to champion. We hope that the EU will honor its commitment to those principles, steer clear of politicizing economic and trade issues, of overstretching the concept of security, and make economically sound decisions that are in keeping with its own interests.
Kyoto News on China-US relations. Recently, we can see that there has been a positive momentum in China-US relations, but military communication has not resumed. The U.S. has been calling for dialogue and communication. What is China's position and response?
中美之间保持
China and the U.S. maintain necessary communication. China believes that the responsibility for the current challenges in bilateral relations does not lie with China. The U.S. should earnestly respect China's core interests and major concerns, stop interfering in China's internal affairs, and harming China's interests. Stop asking for communication on the one hand, yet wantonly make provocations on the other. Stop saying one thing but do another. The U.S. needs to work with China to bring the bilateral relations back onto the right track of sound and steady growth.
下一个问题。
Next one, please.
还有其他的问题吗？
Anything else?
没有的话，今天的记者。
That's the end of today's briefing. Thank you for coming.